Yeah, see, that's not for me.
I know. It's until you figure out this other part I told you that you can go.
Seven o'clock, everybody ready?
Larry control,
Yes, people, yeah, Larry's gonna do all that. Please, rise, I mean, the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, I'd like to thank the deputy mayor for kicking off the first meeting at 5:30 since I couldn't be here. So the first announcement is that we have a check for over $25,000. That was for the library chiller from the capital balance of the Carrier Corporation for $104,207. I guess the only other announcement I had, I just wanted to thank the rec department, the police department, the fire department, all the volunteers, the FACE committee that helped all work together to have a great Rocktoberfest, and New York State for letting up the Tappan Zee Bridge or the Mario Cuomo Bridge for us. I thought it was a great way to celebrate our 150th anniversary, as well as just have a great day in Irvington. So thank you for everyone who made that happen. It definitely was a team effort. It was a great day for sure. I believe all the correspondence is related to the public hearing, so I don't believe I have to actually read anything at this time, but if someone's not here, I can always read it later. Let's double check. Yeah, they all are related to the MFO zone. So I will skip the correspondence, and I will open it up to public comment for anything that is not on the agenda. Otherwise, I will move on to the consent agenda. Do we have any questions on the consent agenda from the board? Otherwise, I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda if I can have a second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is a continuation of the public hearing to consider law amending the zoning code with respect to the development of the multifamily office district. I just want to give a brief overview about what exactly we're having a hearing on tonight. One is amending the language of the multifamily office zone to treat driveways the same way that it's treated in single family zones. Right now, our current code is silent on the issue, and that was a clarification. And then secondly, how the maximum 35-foot height is measured. Currently, it's from the lowest point of a building, and we want to revise that to be from the point of the building where it touches the ground to where you measure it. So that is how it is in most codes. We're actually thinking of adopting that village-wide, but we wanted to do it here where it's a much smaller area being affected, and we can understand the impacts. We believe that it allows for a better design of the buildings, so they don't have to just be, kind of parallel. They can figure out a way to make them take advantage of the slopes. So while you were all, when we get to the public part of the hearing, are free to talk about anything you want, from density to how much affordable housing we should have in town, to should we have allowed boutique hotels or assisted living facilities. All those things you can talk about tonight. You can talk about anything you want. Things have already been voted on. Additionally, items like the appearance of the proposal, the layout, colors, and even something super important like traffic concerns, you can obviously talk about them, but those are not being voted on tonight either. Those are going to be, if there's ever a final proposal submitted, those will be in front of the planning board, where there'll be plenty of time for discussion of those items. And I think one of my last points before I turn it over to my colleagues is the change is being proposed because the Board of Trustees believes that these changes are necessary to allow a development, not by this particular builder, but by anybody who wants to build affordable housing here, to have a successful project that makes sense both for the village. Again, the height thing we think is really for making it a more attractive, building than otherwise could be possible. And that's not just for this builder, it's for any builder in the future as well. So yes, this builder did say, hey, these are some of the problematic issues, but when we did the zoning, we wanted to do it in a vacuum without much builder input. And frankly, we should have picked up on these items, but we didn't. So now we're fixing them. But it's not just for this one proposal. It's for any future proposals. But before I turn it over to my colleagues, a few reminders. We have a 3-minute time limit for comments. You can always go again after everyone else has spoken if you didn't have enough time in your 3 minutes. And as well as the general zoning changes, please let us know if you have any comments on the SEEK reforms, which are obviously part of the hearing as well. I will now turn it over to my colleagues if they have anything they wanted to add.
No, I just think that the last point's an important one, that zoning was organized by the board to allow for multifamily housing, not a particular project, and not an affordable housing project. Affordable housing certainly was something that we wanted to see, but it's not the only thing that can go there. And the purpose of what we're looking at today and the amendments for today are really to clarify what our original intentions were. And have these, in my mind, have these issues arisen earlier, this is how we would have looked at it and how we would have voted to correct.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance because I was en route traveling during the last meeting to discuss this. I wanted to focus just particularly on the height calculation that allows a building to be measured from the based on more or less the topography that it's sitting on. And this is something that I know has been talked about for years in the village. We never really, even if it was even talked about, but then set aside during the last comprehensive plan review. And it's something that I'm glad we're seeing now. The definition looks pretty robust. In fact, it takes care of the issue of underground parking entrances so that they do not subtract from the height of the building. So all of that's great. Consulting about the village attorney. I've worked with Marianne for 10 years on the board here. I've worked with Marianne while I was here on the Green Policy Task Force, on the commission, on the Environmental Conservation Board, and for that as an environmental activist, just as a resident of the village. And I say that I've never seen anything but the utmost professionalism and integrity from Marianne. So I think that I just want to say that She's a well-respected attorney. She's considered somewhat of an expert in New York municipal code. And she also is able to get out and reach out in her network to get answers when there are difficult problems to resolve in the law that aren't particularly clear sometimes. And she gets the best answers possible and then tries to make a resolution that works for the village. So anyways, I'm probably speaking slightly out of school here, but I'm going to assume the rest of the board agrees with me. I'm basically very happy with her service, and I'm grateful to the quality of the advice and consent that she's provided the village over the years. So I'd like to see that as we go forward with public comment tonight, we spend less time attacking the attorney and more time on the facts of the matter before us. Because I think that's really where we keep the discourse civil. And that's what I'd like to maintain in the village. So thank you very much for listening to me on that.
Thank you, Mark. And I think I think the whole board did agree. I know Larry Lonke did, speak up on her behalf, but perhaps we should have defended her more openly at the meeting, as opposed to, to me, it was almost like it was so absurd that I felt that I didn't even need to comment on some of them. But
Probably on TV, so I guess I just had a different reaction.
no, I think you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
I just want to say I wasn't on the board when the board decided to make the zoning changes, but certainly I was an active community member and in favor of affordable housing. And I know that this zoning wasn't specific to any project. I think given the board's desire for additional affordable housing in Irvington, it worked well that an all affordable housing developer bought the property. But I do think that, in terms of when you go through zoning, if there are misses or things that hadn't been thought about, that it is the responsibility of the board, not for this developer, for any development in that area, to make sure that we clarify those things, especially when you see discrepancies where you end up instead on Broadway with parallel, what Mark was just saying, parallel buildings. So I think you have to be careful to, be sort of think that you had one shot at making sure the board was able to achieve everything it wanted to achieve. I think these are changes that we're discussing that have, merit, that have a reason behind why we want to do it. And then I would just also say that, we all are neighbors in this village together, and I just would hope that people are respectful of differing opinions.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going last. I don't want to repeat anything that anyone said, so I don't really have that much to say. The one thing I did want to note is also having joined the board just for this term, I think sometimes with any issue, I'm not limiting it to this one, there's a feeling that the energy in the room is that represents the village as a whole. There were some mentions a couple weeks ago at the last hearing about the board being responsive to the citizens, and I 100% agree with that. I think that we should be responsive to the citizens of the village. And when I undertake that, making decisions, I just want to say I'm considering close to 7,000 people in the village, right? That's really who our responsibility is, who you serve, and any decision that we make will hopefully be in the best interest of the majority of the village.
Okay, one other quick note, programming note, is that we are having some kind of connectivity issue. Larry's doing the best he can to make it work, but when the screen goes out, I guess it moves sound briefly, so we'll try to be cognizant of that as we can. But that said, any public comments? Who'd like to go first? Sure.
Hi, Mitchell Adler, 91 Riverview Road. I'll start out by addressing the comments that have already been made. Someone mentioned facts of the matter. I was at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting last week, and basically the facts of the matter were not addressed. Giving respect to the opinions of the citizens, I think McCallick was denied due process by not having the merits of his appeal considered. The board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, agreed that They refused to hear it on the grounds of jurisdiction. They stated that the question of jurisdiction was very complex and they were not sure about it. Why they then decided in favor of the developer and adverse to the interests of numerous Irvington residents. I think it would have been more worthwhile to be expansive and to have considered, given respect to Mr. McCallick and the represents, and to consider the facts of the matter. Regardless of how the zoning has to be clarified, and the fact that you're clarifying it indicates that it's not really clear, open to judgment as to what it means. Regardless of that, the developer developed his plan with current zoning in hand and appears to be in violation of it. I don't think the proper way to address that is to rezone or clarify the zoning, but first to hear the facts of the matter, give respect to Mr. McCallick and the group he represents, and decide whether or not the developer was in compliance with the zoning as it currently exists. Thank you.
Hi, I'm excuse me, Chris Lando at 3 Risley Avenue East. I'll try to keep within the 3 minutes, but I have a lot of notes here because I actually spent my August watching a lot of the meetings that you guys had on the condemnation of Strawberry Lane, which seems like a very complex topic. I did attend the zoning appeals meeting that was just referenced, and while I couldn't make the hearing last week, I did watch the entire hearing, and a lot of the sentiment resonated, if not the way it was necessarily communicated. So I'll try to go through my understanding of what has transpired, or at least the interpretation of the steps being taken and how we arrive at the proposed amendment. It seems that there's a question as to the viability of the capacity as proposed, hence the clarifying amendment. It seems further that there was an appeal made, and in that meeting where the individual presented a case for the appeal, it was not clear what the course of action was to take. It was not clear that the zoning board had standing to hear the appeal. It was very confusing, and I felt very badly for the individual who came ready to present what he viewed was the interpretation of the zoning code, and to basically sit there and not be able to even understand how to come to the answer as to what was correct. Immediately thereafter, we found out that there would be this new zoning rule to vote on, and that the height and the driveway, I don't think that's necessarily what's at issue, but it's the definition of capacity and how it takes into account driveways in Strawberry Lane. And while many people are happy that we're not going in the direction of condemning Strawberry Lane, my interpretation is that it was a multi-month process run through the state that required a lot of expense, and it was probably not seen as economically viable if there was another path, which might be creating a driveway that didn't apply to the capacity of the site. So just looking at all the complex topics being discussed, the order of the meeting is, it seems that we're working very hard to meet the capacity of the plan as proposed, including in the last meeting's correspondence, input solicited from the developer as to the changes to the zoning rules. So I don't live even anywhere near this project, but a lot of people spoke last week about how they feel impacted by it. And I think some of the things that resonated were that people view the process as obtuse. They view that their concerns are not being taken equally to that of someone who's building on behalf of residents who don't yet exist.
Just about 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll come back. But the point is, despite, I think, what some correspondence has indicated and what the board has indicated is that this project represents the view of the whole and the majority of the village, I think the residents whose opinions matter most are those who are most impacted. It's a project happening in their backyard. I think their voice should have the greatest weight. We as neighbors have to listen to our neighbors when something is directly impacting them. And I'd like to have the time to go through all the details of what I quickly tried to outline, but
You can go back.
The procedure, as I've interpreted it as someone who's trying to stay engaged and keep up with all of the meetings and emails and notes and videos, is indicative of the fact that people don't feel that they're getting a fair shot at participating in what's going on, and that it's in favor of a development that they don't agree with in the first place.
Thank you. Otherwise, you can keep going. No one wants to come next other yet.
It comes out, it's portable. I really didn't want to do that. Because now I have all this little meanderings. But first, I'll remember this time to say who I am. Last time I didn't. So I'll start with my name, Kathy Sears. And I live at 294 South Buckout Street. That is Half Moon South. And I've lived there for 23 years. And I just want to say I support the affordable housing project in the rezoned area in North Broadway in our town of Irvington. And I really appreciate the hard work and the due diligence that the trustees have put forth on this project that is in associate with the Wilder Bolter Partners. And as I support them, I support you as you go forward on this. There are all kinds of ways to call something other. And I was surprised living in Irvington. I mean, Half Moon was built for affordable housing for returning veterans. And now it's, where I live is, I'm doing quite well by that. But I was surprised last year to hear that one of my beautiful teenage neighbors came home from her freshman year in high school and said, our co-op's called a ghetto. So, and it's remarkable because only recently, in a few years, haven't had people of color and diversity in our co-op. And I thought, I know, knowing what kind of work is done in Irvington, this is going to be done right. It's not going to look like my brick buildings, which now are surrounded by beautiful trees and such. It's going to be really impressive. And Irvington does it right. Let's support it and let's call it what it is. It is affordable housing and we stand by it, and we can zone and nitpick little things to shave off slope or whatever's going on here to reduce the number of units, but let's be strong as a group and support this. And I just want to say that a young girl, one of my daughter's peers in high school, my daughter's now 26, she lived in truly affordable housing in Irvington. She now is working up the curate ladder as a curator in international museums. And we have a wonderful community, and I support what you're doing. Thank you for doing it.
3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes.
Just put it back, I think.
Okay.
Actually, I think PJ was the only one who
really
I think if you twist the bottom and pull that little
It's
knob in the
okay.
middle.
When you get too close to it, it buzzes on video. I really only stood up so I could take my mask off and get a breath. I want to start with a question. Is the zoning for 100% affordable housing? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I should have started with that. Glen Cashin, 81 North Broadway, right across the street from the subject property.
It is not.
It is not.
It is, it's zoned multifamily, but
Right.
there are obviously incentives
There are.
if you do more affordable or more
Okay.
workforce.
I think there's a misnomer. And I think to characterize WBP as an affordable housing developer is kind of an inaccuracy, as you stated earlier. They do market rate, they have mid-tier, and they do affordable, and they'll do a mix, right? I don't think this is 100% affordable housing we're talking about
The
here.
current proposal is, the only proposal we've gotten is.
All right. Yeah, I'm not so sure that that's going to be the end result. So I just wanted to clarify that, because they can still do something else, right?
Good, yes.
Yeah, okay.
But that's all good. I mean, if you think about how early we are in the process,
Yeah.
we're probably, the zoning's obviously it's in the ninth inning, and now we're going extra innings.
Right.
The planning process is, first inning, maybe top of the first.
Yeah.
So there's a long way to go.
Yeah, sure. No, I think this gentleman who spoke about, the neighbors, I'm not here to, scrap with anybody. You're all my neighbors, and I respect you all. I really don't wish ill will on anyone. However, I live across the street from this thing, and I'm directly impacted. I'll be impacted from the first day they start blasting and digging for the underground garage, until the last day I live in Irvington and there's traffic coming out of there. So it impacts me a lot more than it impacts others. The other thing I want to say is that, Mr. Mayor, you kind of congratulated prematurely, probably, at the last meeting, people who may have succeeded, and this is the premature part, in crashing down affordable housing here. And, I wrote something based on lots of other feedback and input.
30-second warning.
Okay, so I hope the Board of Trustees can find your way to consider all arguments opposing development along North Broadway without a presumption that there can be no good faith, apolitical objection to overdevelopment along the corridor. Objections are not some proxy for elitism or racism. Most of us who object are on the front lines of the negative impacts of traffic, noise, and light pollution the MFO district will bring to the corridor. The Board of Trustees created the MFO over our objections, the neighbors who are impacted most, and we're genuinely concerned about the negative impact to our neighborhood. That's what this is about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You turn the bottom, turn that full.
You
got it.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry.
Pronoun, perfect.
Scott Edwards, 91 North Broadway. And I'll be fairly brief. I was up 2 weeks ago. I stated a lot of things. Really, I wanted to ask some questions, but I also wanted to say that, and I understand that that woman was trying to be very magnanimous or whatever, but she actually offended me by her comments. I thought it was terrible that someone called it the ghetto, but her next sentence was, we just had people of color. We have little people of color. People of color do not make a ghetto. And I was offended by that, and I'm shaking and I'm close to tears. I just want to understand, people to understand, this is not what this is about. And I had to say that. Now, it's not a good clause. It truly deeply offended me, and I know that she didn't mean to, and I was very hurt. Now, that said, I just wanted to also ask about some of the questions some of the things that you brought up earlier about the height. You said it was from the base of the building, so it could be 70 feet in the front and 35 feet in the back, or it's 35 feet from each individual point? I'm sorry, I didn't
Think
understand.
of it as the topography going up. So it's basically measured. It's always, it can never be more than 35 feet.
From the ground.
From the ground.
So from the ground where it is up.
And
Okay.
there's some subtlety about whether it's existing grade or finished grade. But anyways, but the basic thought of it is just that it's.
Okay, I appreciate that. I had another question, but honestly, I forgot it. I'm sorry. I may come up later. I'm sorry.
It's a good question. Who's next? You're closest.
I think.
First of all, thank you, board. Jorge Magallanes, 286 Riverview Road. I just want to encourage the board to, seek any reasonable variances for Wilder, especially so that they can reach their goal of 100% affordable housing. I think all the benefits of the 100% affordable housing, the environmental requirements that they are forced to meet, and other things. I think every politician in Westchester knows that there's a dire crisis in affordable housing in Westchester, housing crisis in general. So again, I want to encourage you guys to help Wilder out as far as seeking variances for those reasonable things. And just a second, Patty's point as far as Irvington doing it right. I mean, I think Wilder's proved that over their history. They're doing the Y project here in Tarrytown, and they're also doing the Reader's Digest project. Both of these are historic buildings that they're renovating. I think the different municipalities in the area, also know what they're doing as far as, doing it right. So again, thank you very much.
I just want to make one point of clarification. As people are talking about the affordable housing aspect and 100% affordable housing. If you look at the code, there's two tiers of affordable housing that's called out. There's affordable housing that is what we call the capital A, which is by federal and state statute. And then there's affordable housing, another tier above that we defined in terms of getting a little bit more percentage of income. And, so there are two tiers. They're both collectively, we consider them affordable housing, but they're not one tier is not the federal definition or the state definition. It's an expanded definition that allows people with higher incomes to actually get affordable housing within their context. So that's pretty clearly laid out in the zoning itself. And all of the aspects of what a developer could do to get incentivization above the base amount is in the zoning as well. So final thing I want to say is that our village currently, affordable housing with the capital A, the federal affordable, state affordable housing, is currently, what's the number? 1 for every 10 units. So, currently without this kind of code that's in incentivization that's in the multifamily district, if you had 20 apartments, you'd have 2 affordables. So that's a much different profile than what's happening right now because of the push that came really out of the comprehensive plan from a few years ago, that the village overall really was trying to talk about getting a greater amount of affordable housing into the village. So that was a primary goal of the comprehensive plan coming out of it. And so that's what started this whole process of trying to make zoning in the Broadway, North Broadway district, something that would emphasize, wherever possible, the value of affordable housing to a developer. So that said, I just want to second that the folks who did present a proposal, which of course hasn't gone to the planning board yet or anything else. I mean, the initial site capacity has, but they're well respected around the country for what they do, and they're known for producing quality, quality results. I don't think that I agree, we shouldn't be afraid of what they're going to produce, but everyone has their own opinions. So.
You have 3 people at home, but I think we have another gentleman who wants to speak from here.
Thank you very much. My name is Boris Rubenstein, and I live in 70 Strawberry Lane. My wife and I have been living in Irvington since 1994. We strongly oppose the scale and size of the proposed multifamily housing. Let me be clear. I do not oppose its use, that is affordable housing. I oppose the scale of the project. This project, as it stands, will dramatically change our quality of life for the worse, and I believe not only for the neighbors, but for the town in general. Now, let me offer a personal background. I'm an immigrant from Mexico. I grew up in a middle-class environment And the building next door was a vecindario, low-income housing project. So I don't care about who lives in the lot across the street from me. I don't care if the project is low-income housing, affordable housing, or billionaires' estates. What I care is that the scale of the project is terrible. In addition, I'm a child psychiatrist and have dedicated my life to working with children. As such, I work with children from all walks of life, from the disadvantaged and dispossessed to the well-to-do. I work to remedy racism and social injustice as they adversely affect children. Therefore, please do not accuse me of being a closet racist and opposing the project on those grounds. That is insulting. I seriously object to the size of the project. 50 plus units was terrible. 70 units is a disaster. We'll have excessive noise pollution, not only during the construction, but after the project is done. The traffic will be impossible to negotiate. Light pollution will be impossible. And now crossing the street from Broadway, from Strawberry Lane to Broadway, even in a best day, you have to wait 2, 3, 4 minutes and risk being hit by a car. I think that it's going to be very difficult to live there. So we vehemently oppose the proposal to build 70 plus units in the North Broadway corridor. And we urge the board to reconsider the housing project to a lesser scale that will improve the quality of life of the residents of Irvington and the lives of those who will inhabit the reasonable housing project. Thank you.
Here, we're gonna.
Brian, the current proposal is for how many rooms?
It's 54.
54.
54, that's right.
Not 70, just to
So
clarify.
maybe you could clarify that so everybody knows.
I mean, to me, it's, again, we haven't had a final proposal go
Right.
to the proposal, is 54 units.
Hi, David Osborne, resident at 93 North Broadway since 2009. I'm not going to add much to what my neighbors have said. I thought the last few speakers were especially on point. What you're going to vote on tonight, these clarifications of the MFO zoning that you passed before, you have a choice whether to include the driveway or not in the gross calculation. That's a choice. And the choice you make, including it in the gross area, allows the capacity to be such that the proposal that will eventually, in some form or another, get to the planning board, so it'll fit. So we live right next to the property. All the issues about traffic are real, and they're only getting worse. Regardless of what you do there, they're getting worse, because God bless us, the economy continues to grow. And less density is better. We're not against affordable housing. We're not necessarily against multifamily housing per se. I'd be happier if there were 5 single-family houses put in there. But less density is better, so exclude the driveway from the calculation. Thank you.
Anybody here? Or
You want, excuse me, you want the driveway to be included in the calculation. You want it to be taken out of the allowable,
Yes,
sorry, I just want to be sure, because
taken out of the allowable, the gross area.
Larry, why don't we take one of the people on Zoom?
Sure. Felix?
Hey,
Okay.
just want, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, having my own audio issues. Thank you. I have a few questions, and I'm going to try to not to heed your advice, Mayor, not relitigate the zoning as is. I will say, I think one thing that I hope we do take away from this, regardless of how this moves forward, is that when there seems to be, universal, passionate, unanimous opposition to something from the people most affected, that we we figure out a way to weigh that. And I know you did. So again, I don't want to relitigate this issue because it's decided, but everything I'm hearing, I just, I know I expressed some of these concerns before, but just I feel for my neighbors who are most directly impacted. With that said, I had sort of two technical questions. One is around the changes that you're making. I thought your explanation at the beginning was very helpful, and it seemed to characterize the changes as, clarifying technical changes. But then what I'm hearing is that there's sort of the secondary implication that, at least with respect to the driveways, if the changes aren't made, then the proposal as is not viable. Is that the case? Or is there some other reason why? I just can't tell. Is it just technical, or is it just to support a particular proposal as is rather than force the developer to do something different?
Felix?
I'm here. Can you guys?
Yeah, I think as you saw, we've had connectivity issues. So they heard your question, and then just as they were about to answer, they would drop out. Just give me a second, and we'll be back on. I was on with IT all day and they couldn't fix it.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. And
the joys of.
Yeah. So give me a second. Give me a second here, and we'll get back on.
Yeah, no problem.
Because right now you can't hear anything from the meeting room. So,
no.
But I'll get that back on. Just hold on one second. We're still,
no problem.
We're still muted here. Almost there. You could see what I had to do, you'd be surprised. Fine, we'll get it there.
Sorry, and thank you.
Oh, no.
Larry, do they realize that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, otherwise Brian's going to be like, you've exhausted your 3 minutes.
No. Brian wouldn't hold it against you, but I do think, Brian, did you hear I think he got to the end of his question, then it froze.
Correct. Yeah, so then I kicked it over back actually to Mary Ann when I was starting to answer it.
Okay.
I figured she could give the legal answer, the layman's answer.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, the thing is, it's not going to change the site capacity on this project because the planning board already made the site capacity determination that's done at the beginning of the process. And it was not, if anyone wanted to challenge it, they had to bring an Article 78 proceeding, and one was never brought. So it's not, this amendment is not going to change the site capacity of this project, or the failure to adopt this amendment is not going to change the site capacity of this project. If however, this developer doesn't proceed and another one comes in, since the question was raised, it should be clarified.
Understood. Okay. That's very helpful. I think that answers my question because I was getting the sense that, okay, anyway, I don't have to say it again. And then if I could just ask one more question, sorry, I'm sure I'm way over time with all the technical difficulties, but it's just a question about the AMI caps. When we started talking about this, like a year plus ago, we talked about where we wanted to set those caps. And can someone just remind me, is there a specific proposal that this builder has in terms of where they're going to set like the AMI caps for people that are eligible to be in these units, or is that set by us? Like, how does that process work?
Do you have an answer to that, or we have to wait till the proposal?
Well, Larry's more likely to know how that's done. I think it probably partly depends on the funding they get, the state or the county giving them the funding. But the thing is, it is true, somebody raised this point that some of these units are available to people at 100% of the AMI. It's a range. It averages out to what I think it's 60 for rental and 60 for rental. But Mark addressed that earlier and I think was pretty clear about it, that so while this may not be all affordable with the capital A under our code, the combination of that and the 20% bonus, density bonus they get for moderate income housing, and the moderate income housing is housing affordable, that's defined in our code, affordable to families at 100% of AMI. Everything would be included and it qualifies.
Got it. Thank you. So sorry, and I'll promise I'll cede the floor. So basically, it's not in our control. It's based on what they get from funding, which will then dictate what they have to build in that sense.
That's correct. We don't approve the income one way or another.
Got it. Okay.
We just make sure it complies.
Right.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Thank you very much. Oh, and I'm sorry, just one last question. Did I miss the moment where we could talk about issues other than this one? Although, will that be at the end of the meeting?
Yeah, you mean so completely unrelated to this at all.
Yeah, unrelated topic.
There was one early, but there'll be another one towards the end.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Larry, you more online?
Yes. There's several. Lisa again.
Yes. Hi, good evening. Thank you for the time. I'm going to assume you can hear me. So I'm Lisa again. I live at 61 Havemeyer Road. I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak for a moment. I just want to acknowledge and recognize that there is obviously a lot of passion, and it's in the room. Today it was here last time, and I want to start by saying that I have the utmost respect for all my neighbors, everybody in this village, and I recognize that as somebody who doesn't live in the area, I can't say I'm impacted in the same way, but I want to caution us against seeing those who are most directly impacted because they're neighbors as being people to whom we must necessarily 100% defer, because if that were the case, we would never be able to build these kinds of developments that are so desperately needed. As we heard from Jorge, as we all know, there is an affordable housing crisis in Westchester, and it can't be met with building 5 homes or 10 homes at a time. And so I heard what Mitch said when he said he considered the interest of the entire village, all 7,000 people, and the broader community of which we're a part that goes beyond the boundaries of Irvington, in creating housing that can house people. And this is what we're looking at. So I really want to say that I believe truly, and this will not be put to the test, so it can't be proven, that if the shoe was on the other foot, that I would say, yeah, maybe it would look, more aesthetically pleasing to me in a different way, or maybe in a different world, I prefer something else. But I really think that I want to see this here, and I'm willing to have some consequences that affect me personally. And so I just want to urge everybody who is affected in that way to think not only I wouldn't mind an affordable housing development, but what am I willing to give up? Is there something I'm willing to give up in order to see something that people so desperately need to have happen? And the other thing I want to say, which also was said earlier by Kathy and by Jorge, is just to thank the board and to say that I think the board is doing an incredible job balancing so many competing considerations, really listening, which doesn't mean the same thing as everybody winning on the issues they care about, but listening and giving an audience to everybody's concerns, which are very real and obviously very passionate. And it's a hard job, and I'm really thankful to you for doing it, and hope that continues throughout the process, and people will continue to be heard and need to be heard. But I think we're moving in the right direction, and I urge you to adopt the amendments you're considering. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Larry, who's next?
Ruth Cowan.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Ruth Cowan. I live at 1 South Astor Street in Irvington. And I want to make the same point that Lisa just made, but I want to make it in a completely different way. It is simply not in our government the case that the people most impacted by particular governmental action should be given more consideration than anybody else. We are all citizens of Irvington, and we are equally able to have an opinion and to express that opinion at the polls. And I want to point out that there were 2 open spaces on the Village Board of Trustees last fall. There was an election. The people who were opposed to, the people who ran for those seats and who now sit on the board made it very clear that they were in favor of affordable housing in Irvington. I'm also in favor of affordable housing in Irvington, and so I chose to vote for them. The people who were not in favor of affordable housing at that property in Irvington, at the last minute ran candidates for those seats. Those candidates lost badly. And I think that means that the majority of people who vote in the Village of Irvington want affordable housing, and they want it on that site. And affordable housing or multifamily housing is going to have to be, by definition, denser than single-family housing. And we voted for that. For that reason, we don't think that it's going to negatively affect our quality of life in the village. Thank you. In fact, we think it's going to improve our quality of life.
Thank you, Ruth. Larry, is anyone else online?
Yes, Jeff Glick.
Hi, everyone. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm a 9-year resident of Irvington. I live at 5 Stearns Ridge, up by the high school. I understand and respect the need to balance all of these different speakers here today and the passion on both sides. So thanks to echo what Lisa said. Thank you to the trustees for your consideration. I wanted to pick up on the need for affordable housing in the community as well and echo that. And we've mentioned that as we owe the people closest to the project mitigation and hearing out their concerns and addressing them seriously, we don't generally as a society feel like a neighbor has a veto right on any construction next to them. We've dealt with that in our own community up here at Dearman. We had some neighbors who didn't want any construction to happen next to them because it might impact their view. And most of the community up here organized to write letters to the zoning boards and like in support of new construction, even though it isn't that pleasant to live next to it. We felt it was the right thing to do. And even more so when you have a social good like affordable housing. I think some of the traffic concerns about turning left along those intersections that don't have lights will need to be addressed, and certain mitigations about light pollution or other things. And all of those seemed valid, but to say that we can't have affordable housing because we only need the single family low density means that we won't accomplish the goal of affordable housing in Irvington and for our community. So thanks for balancing all these things, but listening and mitigation is not the same as a veto over building rights near you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Anyone else, Larry?
Yeah. Paul Kirby.
Hi, good evening. Paul Kirby, 85 North Broadway, directly across from the Mason property, or on the new owners, the new developers property. I don't feel like I should need to say this, but I should say it, that I am not against affordable housing. I feel like there's an effort to frame it as those for and against affordable housing. I don't think that's fair. I mean, I think it's been better tonight, but I do have legitimate concerns, and especially about the density. If it's a little less affordable, maybe in the next development, we can have affordable housing there too. Why do we have to do it all right here? I know for a fact that the developer sent to NYS DOT a plan, at least one proposal, to open what they're calling a driveway right across from my driveway. Major concerns there about runoff, being able to leave my driveway to take my my young kids to soccer practice or whatever. Light pollution, I mean, I mentioned those at the last meeting, so I won't beat that to death. But I mean, the biggest concern for us is the driveway and site capacity. It seems like a good compromise would be to not include that in the changes tonight. There's concerns about density. That's one way to make, I think I said that right, to not include, or to include the driveways and the site capacity calculation. But there's major concerns about density. That's one way to make it less dense. I think that's a good compromise. I mean, I'm not against affordable housing. I wasn't that vocal at the beginning, but when I saw them opening a driveway, proposing that right across from my driveway, which was our biggest fear when we started following this 3 years ago, it really just is going to have a major impact on our life. Thank you for the time tonight.
Thank you.
I guess I just want to
go
clarify
ahead.
one thing. To state what Mary Ann stated, which is that no matter what we do tonight with voting on this particular set of amendments, the capacity of the site's already been, determined by the planning board. So nothing we do tonight can change that effectively.
For potential future.
What about the appeal that was delayed, though? Someone appealed the planning board's calculation, and that was not heard at the last.
Well, that was appealed. It wasn't appealed when it first was made.
They have evidently there's a 30-day window for an appeal.
Well, someone appealed it, and I think.
Yeah, not within 30 days. Okay. So I don't write state law. I just know what I've been told that state law states. The zoning board looked at the state law and said that they did not have jurisdiction over the issue. In fact, someone would have to bring a different type of Article 78, which I don't know what that would be exactly, in reference to actions that are undertaken, but not necessarily in terms of legislative action. It has to be, if I remember, if I understand correctly, it has to be due to procedural actions of boards themselves, such as planning board. I could be wrong. Am I right on that, Marianne? Or?
Close to right, but I don't think we need to go. I mean, I think you can bring an Article 78 against, the village, but it's not, legislative decisions are virtually unchallengeable unless there's, some procedural problem or some irregularity. I think that's what you were getting at. And what happened is that the challenge to the planning board's determination should have been, if there was going to be one, had to have been brought in an Article 78 proceeding, which Mark said. And then the matter that came before the zoning board was seeking an interpretation, but the board didn't have jurisdictional, the zoning board didn't have jurisdiction over that. And that was what so any appeals are done.
Can I make a comment about that?
Sure.
Can you come to the mic?
Mitchell Adler, no disrespect, but that's the attorney's interpretation of the ordinance. And by her interpretation, if the planning board brings an adverse finding against a homeowner, the homeowner has recourse to going to the zoning board of appeals. But if the zoning board erroneously favors a homeowner, all the adversely impacted neighbors do not have the same recourse, according to her interpretation. They must bring an Article 78 procedure, which is outside of the village. So in one case, a homeowner has recourse within the village, and in the other case, which is pretty comparable, numerous homeowners do not have any recourse within the village. So that's just one reason why I and others believe that her interpretation of the ordinance is wrong, and hopefully the group that is bringing that appeal will litigate, because this should be of concern to all Irvington residents.
Larry, we have one here person, and we can go back to your online person.
Okay.
Sure. So I guess, I want to also just ask a question. Thank you. Sorry about that. Stephanie Fable, 11 Stray Lane. My first question is, My understanding is that the traffic consultant that's used by WBP is also the same traffic consultant that's used by the Village of Irvington. Is that correct?
Well, when we actually get to the point where they actually study traffic, we would actually pick the person we wanted, so.
So it would be independent, it wouldn't,
Correct.
there wouldn't be any
It would
kind of,
not be there. That's just the way it works for every project, is we get to choose who we want to study, not the builder. The builder pays for it, but we choose who we want to do it.
okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
And, I guess I'm kind of confused about the site capacity because, so you're saying that regardless of what's determined today, the site capacity for the existing project is not going to change.
That's correct.
And
Especially for future projects, it could, if someone challenged it.
And that's because again, correct, I'm just trying to understand. It's because the builder put on his application was correct. He had done it with,
It wasn't incorrect. The way it worked for all single-family homes is.
but it's not single family.
I understand that, but our code does not speak to multifamily. So it was interpreted by our department the same way, and that's what we're clarifying, is that we also agree with that the same way, multifamily or single.
But under the existing law, because it's not changed yet, the builder, what he submitted was wrong. And
It wouldn't have been wrong because it's silent on it. So
but it wasn't sad because during the planning board, meeting, somebody brought it up at the
Sure, if you just mind me to come back up so here you
Comes back up.
Yeah, no, yeah.
The other way
No,
around.
Yeah, no, come on. No, you
Now
can
you can come up.
We're
You
back.
can come up. Yes, want people listening at home.
Sure, this is Tony Altamir on One Meadowbrook Road. Just for a point of clarification, because we have a lot of sort of procedural law, administrative law, and we're not talking about things on the merits as well. My understanding of things is that the determination or the interpretation given to the developer at the planning board, which some people think may have been erroneously given, was something that may have been challenged through an Article 78 proceeding. It's not the exclusive remedy for that, at least under one reading of the law. But having not made that appeal, there was always the possibility of bringing it before the zoning board of appeals, which could have heard it if one were to interpret that decision by the planning board as having been made by an administrative officer, which some folks in some places might think that they are administrative officer, given the powers that they've been provided by under our law. And in other places, maybe they would argue that they're not an administrative officer. That's a sort of a question to be decided. That in and of itself could be the basis of an Article 78 proceeding, which may well happen. If that were to happen and the court would decide that the ZBA has the jurisdiction to hear this, then they could hear it as a matter of, on the merits. So to sort of say that, well, it's been decided, it's over, nobody can challenge it, this developer has the right to do this because that's sort of settled law is not accurate. It's just not the case as a matter of law. Putting that to the side, I think, and I also want to mention, there are many instances under the law where neighbors, property owners who are specifically impacted, directly impacted by something that might be changed, are given some heightened rights, whether it's rights to notice of what's going on, special notice provisions that they only receive, and things of that nature, because it's well understood as a matter of policy, as a matter of fairness, that they are going to be impacted most directly. Their input should be solicited. There should be some consideration given, probably heightened consideration given to those particular people. So to argue that somehow, well, this was handled through a political election and therefore that's it, that's not quite accurate. Also, we're talking about a lot of the discussion here is about, are you for affordable housing or against it? I mean, the zoning provides for any type of multifamily housing. It could be all high-end, super expensive luxury units up there, or it could be the other end of the spectrum. It could be a combination of all of that, workforce housing, all of those things. We all get that. None of us is against affordable housing, although there seems to be a fair amount of affordable housing available in this community. Whether you call it big A or little a affordable housing, there's a substantial number of rental housing units available in the price ranges of the AIM that you're talking about. So there's plenty of that available. My point is simply, we're concerned about the density. You were concerned about the density when you enacted the law because you have all these conditions precedent to having the planning board issue permits, including concerns about traffic, safety, historical issues, quality of life issues. I think this is something that can't be resolved. I don't see.
None of those have been resolved.
And I don't see how, because you said at the last meeting, a single additional car added to the volume of traffic that we currently have would have an increased adverse impact. So we have a situation here where you have a statute that really doesn't work because on the one hand, it's trying to encourage development up there, multifamily development, but on the other hand, you have all of these roadblocks that you've put in that really make it impossible for those two issues to be harmonized. So I think as you're looking at amending the law here, maybe you should be thinking about amending it in a more comprehensive way, so somehow we can do something up there that works and works for everybody's perspective. And maybe starting with what my neighbor talked about dealing with the driveways a certain way to try to limit the density would be a good starting point, irrespective of what's built up there.
Thank you.
So one thing, just so that we got the context correct, we don't set the requirements for state environmental, review that's set by the state. There's for a project of this type, there's an extremely involved set of questions that the state gives as a baseline, including, noise impacts, traffic impacts, blah, blah, blah. But also the process allows the community to add their own input to what other significant issues need to be added to the secret review. All of that has to happen at the planning board level before anything moves forward in terms of any kinds of approvals. They have to be shown by the developer that they have actually mitigated these concerns to a sufficient level. Now, that's to me has always been the big problem, is the traffic, and how do you mitigate that? So I'm waiting to see how the developer proposes to mitigate that in front of the planning board. But it will be part of the secret process that tends to be very long. It tends to be very involved with public input throughout the entire process and public review of the proposed results of the seeker documentation. So I agree that that's probably the biggest concern about, in my mind, it's the problem of the commons. Like right now we have bad traffic. how can we do anything on that location and not make traffic worse for everyone?
Just a quick point. The mayor mentioned that at the last meeting, I believe, that, perhaps the only way to mitigate it really would be to have no cars up there, have some kind of transportation service provided of some sort. I mean, I know you were maybe facetious at the time,
Really,
but frankly.
I don't know how you do it, to be honest.
Yeah, and when you're in the context of so little, such a small number of additional traffic vehicles adding to the problem, and these guys are talking about building something with 100 parking slots in there, and all the other transportation that is attendant to a project like this, delivery trucks, all that kind of stuff coming up there. I think it creates a situation that's totally untenable. So maybe there's a more comprehensive review that's needed here. We're kind of like twiddling with some little technical corrections.
The way we typically look at it is, we set up zoning, and zoning is, to me, like, it's kind of a blunt object, right? Like, it kind of sets requirements. It's not up for me to solve the builder's problem. Like, he has to come up with the way to solve the traffic issue, which to me, I'm still so curious how they plan on doing that, because to me, they're aware of it. We brought it up every single time that we met with them in public. When Larry's met with them, so I have to imagine they have something.
Yeah, but realistically, you enacted a statute that provides for a certain maximum density. And by definition, that brings with it a myriad of traffic issues that you had to have been aware of at the time. So why would you enact, or you propose legislation that would create such a big?
Who knows if there was, in New York State, probably, it's just like, there could be things that happen, like in 10 years, in 5 years, in 50 years, who knows? I don't know. It's not my job, again, to solve the builder's problem. So,
Brian, I just want to point out, Brian, that I think in a previous meeting, there was kind of a misnomer about traffic. So the existing zoning that you adopted a year ago, or year plus, doesn't say that there won't be additional traffic. But it does say that there's a level of service of the various intersections along Broadway that need to be maintained and achieved. So it's a matter of the amount of degradation that's allowed. And it's a little bit complicated for traffic study, but I don't want you to kind of go along with the idea that there's no additional traffic generated on the site, because not everyone's going to be riding a bicycle, as you said. So anyway, it's more complicated than that, and frankly, the planning board deals with that routinely as part of their approval process for any project.
Hello, I'm Leola from North Continent Street. And I wanted to, first of all, welcome Mitchell and Arlene, who I haven't been to an in-person meeting in a long, long time, and to thank Larry and Brian and Mark and Brenda and Larry and Marianne for their incredible listening to all of this stuff. And hello, community. So those of you who may not know me, I've been in Irvington, 26 or so years, and I often stand up for the environment. And that's what I'm here for, relating to it's 2 points that we're debating tonight, right, in the public hearing? Okay. And so I just wanted to, first of all, set the tone that I don't like any building at all, really. I'm an environmentalist. I'd like there to be not any more building. However, there is a gigantic need for affordable housing, including another ordinance thing that you're looking to change, that people who work here could be from further places. It's not environmentally friendly to have everybody commuting from far away, especially at our jobs within our village that are not the highest paying jobs. You need to live nearer to work. You need to not spend a ton of gas. And traffic-wise, so the first point is also that you're considering the driveway issue. And I did serve on the code modernization part of the 10-year comprehensive plan, the code modernization. We discussed things like pervious surfaces. And so if it's approved that there shall be a driveway so that the appropriate amount of cluster housing can be developed here. And by the way, the environmental impact of people living closer together with leaving some natural space around is much less when people, when there's affordable housing together. We have an incredible opportunity for things like geothermal and air source heat pumps and solar to make the building have a low environmental impact. So although I don't like the idea of building, I do think we have an incredible opportunity to solve an incredibly huge problem of affordable housing and people not being able to live here. And we need people to be able to live here affordably. So I guess what that means is I do favor the permission for the driveway issue as long as it's pervious surface and a way to kind of keep the water on site instead of having it run off and cause problems. The other is in terms of the building, I think that your proposal here is good. It's more like natural to have the building go the slope of the hill. And so I think that's probably a really good idea. And there's been a lot of talk about traffic here. We haven't. I'm on 3 minutes? Okay. So I would require sidewalking and safe walking and biking for the entire village so that there will be fewer cars from the people who live there and the general community. Thank you.
Larry, is someone else on the line?
Yes. Tom Thacker.
Hey, Tom.
Good evening, Tom Thacker, 14 North Buckout Street. I already wrote a letter, which is in the public record. I'm speaking as a private citizen, even though I am a member of the Housing Committee, which also has a record in the public letter in the public record tonight.
Can you maybe speak up a little, Tom?
Yeah, sorry about that. Hold on a second. Is that better?
Yes.
Hello?
Yep. Yeah, better.
Okay, sorry about that. Should I repeat what I said or?
Nope, I think we got the gist.
Okay, you got the gist of it. Anyway, I just wanted to, first of all, echo the comments of a number of the speakers earlier about the positive impacts on the broader community. And I do recognize that it will have impacts on the neighbors, but it will also have impacts on the texture of our community. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned, and I think the most positive impact will be on 55 families who currently can't afford housing in Westchester and will be able to be housed. And I think that's an incredible gift that we could give to those families and also to the county of Westchester. So I really urge the board to pass the amendment and to move forward with this project, assuming that the builder can satisfy all the various needs that have been posed by some of the neighbors and other residents regarding primarily traffic. Thank you.
All right, you tailed off at the end, but I think we got it. You said one more there, Larry?
Yes, Elaine Katz.
Okay, Elaine?
Evening. Elaine Katz, 28 and a half years on 76 Greenway Drive and moving next month to Cottonette Street. So I'm a long-term resident and have a commitment to this village and to staying in this village. I want to thank the Board of Trustees for the thorough process addressing the development of this site. I understand that this is the only site in our village that can further Irvington's commitment to affordable housing. I would like to add my voice to Ruth Cowan's in reminding this board that a large majority of this village spoke in favor of affordable housing when we elected Arlene Burgess and Mitch Bard. I also want to underscore Lisa Gen's comments that important goals require some sacrifices. And I also want to underscore Tom Thacker's. There is a larger community out there, and in fact, it might even include some of our children who can't possibly afford housing in this village. It's not just them, it's us. And I'd like us to look at that big picture, all of Westchester and Irvington's role and commitment to our community and to the larger community in solving problems. So thank you for your hard work. Obviously, I'm in favor of the development of this site.
Okay, Larry, another one you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Kamran Saliani, 26 Park Avenue. I just wanted to say I grew up here. I've lived here for like 24 years. Yes, young people cannot afford to live here, and so many families have been forced out of Irvington from when I was in IHS. But just to say, like, next door, we had two gigantic homes built that took like almost 2 years. For 8 months, we had an insane amount of street construction where they actually messed up and they had done the wrong work for 4 months and had to go back and do new. It was a nightmare. And now Sunnyside is going to be closed for like who knows how long. And it all sucks. But at the end of the day, all of these projects have made Irvington so much better. And there's one thing I've noticed living in Westchester and growing up here is that every time one of these kind of things like happens, it's exhausting and frustrating and it's a pain. But in the long run, it's great for the village. It's great for the town. It's great for the county. And we live in a place where we need to make sacrifices together as a community to, make the place better, make the village better. And I'm excited for the chance to do that. Yeah, noise sucks, but it'll end one day, and then we'll be better village for it. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else here? Please. You're next.
Opposite tract, 20 Strawberry Lane, again, kind of new on
Could
the
you
block.
speak into the mic? I'm sorry.
Yes, so just to sort of a comment that popped into my head while I was listening to the last person speaking about what is, beneficial for the community at the time, what appears to be beneficial. And what it came to mind is that what New York City thought was beneficial back in the day when they blew up Penn Station and built a huge Madison Square Garden, and we're almost ready to blow up Grand Central, and it was saved by a private donation. And how what seems to be appropriate or the urgent at the time doesn't necessarily translate into the perpetual goodness, and you have to sort of think in the scope of history. But another comment is actually a question, I think. How is everybody is talking about the need for affordable housing, and again, I want to say I'm for affordable housing, there's no question, but how is this need actually determined? But there was a comment from Terry that, right? Right, so about that, their existence of affordable housing in Irvington, and how much more of it is needed, and how that need is actually quantified. Because if this is built, will it satisfy the need? Will it be another, how many more units need to be built to satisfy the need? And how is that determined? Is there a objective determination?
Well, I'd refer you to the Westchester County Needs Assessment Study that was done and published, I believe 2019 is when it was published. It's available online. It's specific to every community in Westchester and gives statistics and numbers.
Irvington as well?
Irvington as well.
Please.
Okay, so you don't have to read my letter. I made a mistake, I think, in the first part. My name is Kay O'Keefe. I live at 171 South Buckout Street. I've lived there for a little more, maybe 21 years. I didn't live in Irvington for the 7 years prior to that, but I lived on Station Road for 77 years, maybe starting 35 years ago. So my kids went through the Irvington High School. My daughter went to school with Brian and his wife, Kira. I've been here for a long time. When I moved here to Irvington 35 years ago, the population was probably half of what you're talking about today. I remember the school district in total had 1,000 children. Our village has become increasingly out of reach for working families and people on fixed incomes, while rents, home prices, and taxes have increased dramatically. Current residents are finding it difficult to stay in the village they love, and our children will find it difficult or impossible to build a life here. And our new residents will be restricted to the small percentage of people who can afford our high housing costs. It has become increasingly ever more difficult for regular working people like teachers, nurses, food service, retail, and public employees to live here. Our village benefits from economic and racial diversity that a wider range of housing costs would allow. The proposed development is modest, situated next to other multifamily housing, and will not change the quality of life in Irvington. The preliminary architectural drawings suggest an aesthetically pleasing development that will complement rather than detract from the property on which it is built. The needs assessment for affordable housing in Westchester was recognized by the landmark Housing Needs Assessment published by Westchester County in 2019. We believe it is incumbent upon our community, as it is for other municipalities throughout Westchester, to be responsive to the needs in this survey. Also, I would like to say that the life that we live, the places that we live, our environment, it is not static. I remember when, oh my God, the top of Main Street. Thank you. I remember when they were building Field Point, the outrage in the community. And I believe there was also outrage when they had that development built across from the reservoir. Things change. Life is not static. Things change. We have to accept that. And when you say that certain people are greatly impacted, that may be true to some degree. Broadway is the only road that runs through our town. We will all be impacted by the traffic. And sometimes we just have to deal with that because that's evolution. That's how life goes on. And that's how we have to provide housing, not just for the wealthy. We have to provide housing for everyone. Thank you.
If anyone else, otherwise, I wanted to give Chris Lando another chance to talk. If anyone didn't want to go first.
I just want to come back, Chris Lando, 3 Ardsley Avenue East. I just want to come back to the substance of what's being decided, which includes capacity and the inclusion or exclusion of driveways in Strawberry Lane from that capacity. If the plan as approved by the board does not require this change, and every single person who has expressed dissatisfaction with what's going on is primarily concerned about capacity, there's no reason that this board should decide to take a measure that could allow someone in the future to increase that capacity from the plan that's already outlined, and to prevent the individual who is appealing, who allegedly doesn't have the right to appeal, the ability to appeal the decision as it's already been made. I think it's preemptive of the board to take the trustees to take a decision that would preclude someone from participating in whatever rights they think they have to appeal that decision and preclude them from following it. And if you're all right, the substance of what's being changed doesn't impact the plan at hand. And it's just further allowing the vector of density to negatively impact everyone who's argued that the density is their primary concern. So I would request that we not make the change as proposed to the driveways in Strawberry Lane in the capacity calculation, because it's not fundamentally changing the proposal at hand, but it is fundamentally negatively impacting everyone who's already indicated how they are negatively impacted by the building proposal.
Thank you.
It's PJ McCallick, 11 Strawberry Lane. If sure.
The microphone, I think, is for the audience that's listening, so everyone will hear you if you just speak up. I'm not sure yet that the microphone's
Okay,
going to make it any louder in here.
got it. I just wanted to say if anybody is more interested in that ZBA hearing that was discussed a few minutes ago, I just sent Larry Schopfer the documents related to that, so it should be in the record for this hearing. I also sent him a bunch of other emails that I obtained via FOIL request showing the background of the revisions that we're discussing tonight. I also just had like a very technical question, if I can get to the text of the amendment. And it's just I guess this is probably a question for the village attorney, but right now the amendment reads, in calculating the base site area in the MFO district, the land on which any driveway is to be built that leads directly, blah, blah, blah. All right, so I think as most of you know, right, the base site calculation, according to the site capacity law, is split between the area of existing roadways and then the area of roads to be built. So I just want to clarify that, is that language intentional, that, in other words, we're creating an exemption for roads to be built, but not for existing roads? So, for example, the Carafield property, everyone knows, huge driveway, lots of pavement. The way I read this, it would mean that that stuff would actually be taken out of the calculation as it is everywhere else in the district. Is that what you guys are intending to do?
Marianne?
No, that's in a different paragraph. The site capacity has a formula, and that's a different part of the formula. No, it wouldn't affect that. If you're talking about the existing roads, no. That wouldn't change.
Right. Okay, so again, I just want to, I guess if I were WBP and I were interested in 88 North Broadway, for example, I think I would be a little concerned that all that pavement is going to come out of my calculation. I just want to make sure everyone understands the implications of that. All right. And then just for the EAF itself, there's a reference on the first page to a narrative description of the intent of the proposed action, but I don't see that. And is there an attachment that's missing? I'm talking about in part 1, line item 1, that's the box that's clicked yes.
Yeah, what you would do is just attach the local law, because it's clear from the local law what it is.
And then have the actual calculations been done to see what the impact would be of passing this law? So in other words, just approximately how many units would be generated as a result across the 4 lots? Is the map somewhere?
My understanding is that without changing this is how it would have been interpreted by the building. Right? So it wouldn't have changed. Our original calculations on the number of units would be the same.
Right, okay, so that's the calculation for 1 lot, right? But I mean, we're talking about a change to the entire district. So I'm just picking up on the language here. It says part 3 should also explain how the lead agency determined that the impact may or will not be significant. In other words, again, I'm not a land use lawyer, but it seems like there's an expectation that somebody was doing at least some kind of calculation.
I think my understanding, Marianne, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the way we currently interpret it is that this is literally a clarification that this is the way that our building department had been interpreting it already. So it doesn't actually impact any of the number of units. Is that right, Marianne?
Yes, Brian.
Right, but I guess as Mark alluded to earlier, right, there's some prognostication that's going on here as well, right? We're not just talking about a past project, but we're talking about future projects, right? And so I mean, in other words, I guess this is a yes or no question. Has somebody actually measured out the area of the driveways that would be created, for example?
No, you don't know what they are. I mean, there's, one of the things that's kind of odd about this is that usually you come in with a site capacity application, and there's no project in mind. Somebody just said, I want to buy this lot, and I need to know, or I'm the contract vendee on this lot, and I want to know how many dwelling units I can build. And you come in and you count the land, you subtract what roads are there, you subtract easements, you subtract environmental features, and then you have your site capacity. It's 4, it's 55, it's whatever it is. Then certainly with single family houses, let's say they come in, they've got 4, they don't know where the driveways are going to be. They don't know the size of the driveways. It doesn't matter. The site capacity is independent of that. And this just makes the multifamily district parallel to that.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess the last point is, look, I think the way I understand the hard look doctrine, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's at least got to be some kind of pencil work involved. And it seems like, under the circumstances, that it's not expecting too much, just using the existing proposal, for example, come up with a rough number of how much pavement the change would impact. Finally,
you're using the baseline as if it was counted the other way, but there's what you're saying, counting it versus not counting it. But there's nothing in the code now that says that it should be counted, right? It's not addressed.
Okay, so we're talking about, all right, so again, we're obviously going to disagree on that, right? I've just spent quite a bit of time making the opposite argument. Anyone can read about that. I do just want to make one clarification, since you mentioned it, Mayor. You said that the building department came up with this interpretation in May. That's not the way I remember it. Ed Marin was on vacation for the last 2 weeks of April. The determination that's at issue here was made by James Hahn, who is from Hahn Engineering, and the village attorney. I mean, that interpretation, after some exhaustive review, I can tell you, is new to Irvington. Okay, in other words, the only confusion that is being cleared up here is the confusion that the village attorney and James Hahn created. Okay, they're solving their own problem. There's simply no evidence of this kind of interpretation have any kind of purchase in the last 33 years. Yeah, on that, if I could just add one last thing, because somebody mentioned the outrage over the Field Point development. Some of that outrage was put into action. I don't think I need to tell you this story, Mr. Mayor, right? Because you alluded to this yourself, how that affected you when you were a kid, right? So what ended up happening is that a bunch of people got together and they called for a moratorium on development in Irvington. That lasted for 2.5 years. And in that time, the LUC committee, Comprehensive Plan Committee, came up with a bunch of proposals on how to curb overdevelopment in Irvington. One of those proposals was the resource protection statute that's being undermined right now, right? That has a backing of a comprehensive plan committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry, did you have to say Felix wanted to talk again?
Yes.
Okay, let's sound check.
Yes.
You're good.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, thank you. Couldn't help myself. This has been, very illuminating in many ways. But first, I just want to echo what's been said before by others that I really appreciate the ability of this board to listen and be thoughtful. I've agreed and disagreed passionately with a lot of things that have come before you on this topic and others, but I've always found you to be responsive and really trying to get to a good place. So I thank you for that. Just one thing that I wanted to bring up that I forgot to bring up earlier. And one of the other speakers, reminded me of it, which is I had asked like a year ago whether there was any way legally to give preference in this development to people in our community. I mean, I know we keep talking theoretically about how this is supposed to be for people who, work here but can't afford to live here. I suspect, I've got no evidence, that there would be more support generally if people knew that we were actually going to be, giving, homes to our teachers, police, firefighters, et cetera. Is there any way to do that? I know there was some legal issue with doing that under some conditions.
It's very simple. If we pay for it, we can do whatever we want. The problem is if you take federal or state money, you lose that control. But one thing I found from talking to other mayors that have had similar projects is that the vast majority of people who want to live in this area would be, say, from the river towns to up to, say, Ossining. It's to me, the way I look at this is not righting some, racial wrongs here. It's literally about economics. And the thing I get probably most, Felix, from people, the question I get the most is, or the complaint I get the most is, it's so expensive to live here. I can't still live here. Mostly seniors, but I also get it from younger people. Before I was a mayor, I was a volunteer fireman, and can't tell you how many we've lost that moved up to Rockland or Orange counties. We have a couple that actually live in the Burnham building, which is, I think it's 24 of the 30 affordable units we currently have. So that model, we used to be able to preference, is the short answer. The law was changed by the state. We can't, except if we obviously paid for it ourselves. But the vast majority of applicants are local people, is what the evidence seems to prove. And over time, it actually becomes more and more local people, as those are the ones who continue to apply. Maybe when it's a new shiny building, you get people from outside the area, but at the end of the day, it typically is local people that want to live there. So
that's helpful, actually. No, thank you for that. That's helpful. And this was kind of I wanted to pair that with my question about AMI, and it just slipped my mind when I was talking. So my concern was that may be the case, and that's encouraging. But I was concerned that the way that the AMI caps worked, and it sounds like we don't control it, so this is theoretical, is that like we might price out our own, police officers. No one. I don't think anyone thinks our police officers are, living high on the hog, but they might be making enough not to qualify. And I don't know about the other emergency workers. It just happened, we published the salaries of people in the minute, so I see some of them. But is that the case, or am I wrong about that? Will they actually, at least theoretically, be able to consider living there?
There's obviously a lot of moving parts on the calculations. Do they have, are they married? Do they have children? The two families, they are two people working in a household. But someone in the first 5 years of, say, being a police officer would I believe qualify at the 80% level. Again, depending on the circumstances. And I think it's similar for, first couple of years of teaching. Yes, our police chief probably wouldn't qualify, and our lieutenant. I would actually guess guys after 6 or 7 years probably wouldn't qualify either. But I think the earlier folks, I think some of our DPW workers, even after a longer period of time, would. And I think a lot of our seniors that look to downsize, and the ones that want to stay in the Northeast would qualify as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the record on that point, that's great, by the way. For the record, I was a big proponent of senior housing, but as I recall, this property is not, I know that's not what the developer's intent is anyway, but I believe they can't do senior housing, right? That proposal that was discussed and eventually rejected. Am I right about that?
I believe they still could build senior housing. I don't think there's any specific preferences for senior housing.
Got it.
No assisted living.
No assisted. Yeah. I'm sorry. Okay.
That was what it was, but you can have senior housing. Yes.
Understood. Okay. Got it. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for this. Anyone else online, Larry?
No.
Just ask a question.
Sure thing.
Right now, there's a proposal for whatever it was, 55, 54 units, 50, and it's supposedly all affordable. But there's nothing that mandates that it be all affordable. It's possible that this developer, as he goes through the process, could decide that in order for this to be economically feasible, given what his cost basis is, he gets a bump, but he may decide that, building high-end super luxury units would get him the highest return, which is very possible. So when we frame this discussion about we're in favor of affordable housing and therefore we want this to be done, and and versus like the density issue. It's very possible this could turn into a super high-end luxury multifamily rental project. And we won't result in any affordable housing.
Well, you have, if they.
Well, we'll have to have 10% affordable housing.
10% set aside, which
No,
is
correct,
something. But as you just said, if it knocks it from 50-something units down to 30-something units, but it pencils that way, and then he has to build 3 affordable housing units, we haven't, as a village, really done much to achieve a goal of affordable housing. Yet we're going forward as if this is going to be 50 units of affordable housing. It very well may not be that at all. It may not be any. It could be 3, but we're still going to have the same issues regarding traffic implications and all the rest of it. So I think, people should just keep that in mind, that the people who are against building something substantial here because of density reasons, it's not about affordable housing. It's about the density. And we may not get any affordable housing out of this. We may get 3 units.
And I think, we try to put in as many incentives as we could to make it attractive for someone, and that's why it is dense, more dense.
But we all know that people are moving out of the city to live in communities like this, and price points are going up, rentals are going up. Buying housing is very expensive, so rental may be the option. A lot of people may move out of their homes and sell them and decide to downsize, and they're happy to rent a very high-end unit. So most developers are finding that developing affordable housing, if you don't do it with tax credits, doesn't work, doesn't pencil. And this is not a tax credit deal. So I think that you should be aware of the fact that this could become a luxury rental apartment.
I probably should give him my shot on this one, but I just know that the last major development of, luxury housing, the single family attached luxury housing at Marker Ridge, basically the sales collapsed due to the cost. That was a couple of years ago. There were some other issues with Con Ed and gas line access and everything else, but delays. But there is a limit to what, people are going to pay for in terms of, any kind of multi-unit housing.
And
I would beg to differ, especially post-pandemic. I think that the market has changed dramatically.
I will say
I work
that
with developers all the time, and multifamily high-end trumps about every other kind of development you can do right now.
the current proposal is a tax credit deal, though. They already applied for it, so.
They got it?
They already did, correct. So that's the only way it's feasible, to be honest. So. Anybody else? Sure. I think most of them spoke already. We had one from Anthony and Don Grande. After seeing the agenda, we'd like to participate tomorrow. This was last meeting. We had prior commitments and allow for outrage over the emails from the village attorney and Walter and WVP. Cannot allow them to dictate policy. Ask you to vote no on changing the site capacity rules and allow them to put even more units than the law currently allows. We asked that they follow the rules, and you only approved only 1 year ago. Walter Montgomery wrote the highlights here. The proposed development is significantly bigger than I believe makes sense for various reasons of safety and quality of life. We should not allow any increase in the size of the project. Please do not vote immediately on the issue tonight. That was again for the last meeting. Please ensure the village has done everything practical to obtain independent, rigorous research on the impact of sizable low-income housing projects on the suburban community. Encourage the planning as well as other boards to avail themselves of the research. None of the aforementioned measures directly, he gave some ideas, but then none of the aforementioned measures directly address traffic flow and congestion or pedestrian safety, all of which are perhaps more situation-specific problems than the study tackles. Particular in pedestrian traffic safety remain of great concern to my wife and me, as well as many other residents. That's Walter Montgomery, who lives on Strawberry Lane. Peter Bernstein, thought you might be interested in this article from Kingston regarding controversial housing development. I'm proud that our village is taking the housing crisis seriously and working towards providing additional housing opportunities. It has a link, so it's from the Times Union. It's kind of a tough letter to read without a link. And then there's the Irvington Housing Committee, which we haven't heard from officially. trying to see if there's an easy way to, I don't think there's a really easy way to summarize this, unfortunately, because it's not really bullets, it's all paragraphs.
Hey, Brian.
June, yes.
Karen Schatzel's on, and she's on the housing committee. I don't know if she's planning on speaking on behalf of them.
Oh, okay. Did she raise her hand or?
Yeah, if you want me to
Okay.
allow her to
Must
talk.
go to the meeting reading the page.
Well, let's see.
Okay, am I unmuted?
You are unmuted and loud and clear,
Okay.
Karen.
Thank you. My name is Karen Schatzel. I live at 292 South Buckout here in Irvington, and I hadn't planned to speak tonight, but I've been very interested in all the different points of view, and I just would like to throw in a couple more ideas. I'm particularly sympathetic to those who would lose their view when with the proposed housing on North Broadway. And of course, the traffic, there's no question, the traffic problem is going to increase no matter what. But on the other hand, I fully support affordable housing. And I feel we are a privileged community. And I feel for that reason, we should be considering some other economic questions here. Between my husband and me, we've owned 4 different properties here in Irvington since we moved here in 1968 with our 6-month-old son, who's now 55. And I've seen lots of changes. And when we came in initially, we were among the poorest folks because my husband was a Korean War veteran and we didn't have a whole lot of money. And I was thrilled to come to this community with its wonderful housing and wonderful schools in particular. But I want to mention, as I said, a couple of economic considerations. And one of them is that the 2020 census here in Westchester proved that we are becoming disproportionately old. The biggest increase was in old people like me who need the most services, whereas the people in the 35 to 50-year-old age bracket were decreasing. And these are the people who are really supporting the economy of the county. So that's why affordable housing is one of the highest priorities for the current administration. And the current county executive is knocking himself out trying to develop more corporate growth and development here. But companies don't want to come to Westchester because obviously there's so little affordable housing anyplace. So it's kind of a losing battle, and long range, if we can't attract more corporate tax holders and so forth, we're going to be paying more. We have wonderful schools, and unfortunately, there are too many old people who vote against school budgets. I could never imagine that. But on the other hand, people come here because Irvington has a wonderful school system, and we are paying, though, disproportionately more than we should be, because we have all these administrators in our small school district that the state requires of us, but we have to pay for them. So our per pupil costs are much higher, and we could benefit from having more children in our school district. People don't know that before the pandemic, there were more people who were commuting into Westchester than were commuting out of Westchester. I know a lot of people think of Westchester as being a commuter's paradise, but I was astounded one time before the pandemic, the train, pardon me? I'm sorry, have I run over my time?
I was going to say you're at 3 minutes.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll try to speed it up then. But I remember before the pandemic being astounded one night on the platform how many people were getting on the train from the development down on the Hudson River and commuting out of Irvington, so that we need more development here that is corporate also. So anyway, again, I hope that we can have more affordable housing for families, because I'm thrilled to see young families coming in here at Half Moon Apartments. But on the other hand, these are small apartments. They have very small kitchens and one bathroom, and people deserve more housing. So I hope that we can support.
But thank you very much, Karen.
All right, sorry about my running on and on.
At least we didn't lose connection, please.
I guess that doesn't.
It doesn't count for the letter either.
Natalia Broyden, 93 North Broadway. I just going to make basically a motion appeal. I feel like we're talking in two different completely groups. We're living right across the street from the building that's proposed, and everybody else is making political speech about how to make Earth better or world better or whatever it is. It's wonderful to have all these aspirations, but where reality, Broadway is very narrow. There is only this many cars can drive in front of our house. We live literally across the street from the right now green lawn, and this green lawn will become a huge building with a lot of apartments. It really doesn't fit into lifestyle and basically like village, what Irvington is. So that's it.
Thank you. TJ?
Thank you. Trustee Bard, just to go back to our exchange earlier about what the building department was thinking at the time that they issued that interpretation. This is the paper trail. Just putting it into the record. Feel free to read it if you're interested.
Paper trail,
Me and Ed Marin immediately after the determination.
Do you want to give some kind of summary? I mean, obviously,
I think it's a little bit late for that, to be honest, but yeah, I mean, it's there if you need it.
Anybody else? Anyone else online, Larry?
No.
Okay, well, actually, let me get this letter that I didn't get skipped. In June 2021, after several years of study and extensive public discussion and debate, the Irvington Village voted to change the zoning of North Broadway corridor to multifamily office. Final determination was made pursuant to careful consideration of the needs of the village residents, workers, and business owners. Having made a commitment to encourage construction of housing affordable to a broad range of families and individuals, village and its residents must move forward to guide the process in such a way as the outcome which the entire village can be proud of. WBP Development, the development firm which has stepped forward to strong interest developing 76 North Broadway, has been one of the most highly regarded developers of mixed income residential real estate in Westchester County and beyond for the last 30 years. Projects have won numerous awards while also being on the cutting edge of housing construction, which meets the requirements of affordability as defined by the federal government. Goes on to talk about their green accomplishments. During the design process, WBP typically holds numerous meetings with local stakeholders, find solutions for concerns. They also look to architecture for design context. As the MFO zoning amendment is now the law governing development of the North Broadway corridor, multifamily housing will be built. It's up to the village to determine whether the housing will be built by one of the most highly regarded and reputable residential development firms in our area. They'll make the process so cumbersome they'll choose to take their money and expertise elsewhere, opening the opportunity for builder potentially without the same level of commitment to the community or proven development record. As we clearly prefer the former outcome, Irvington's Housing Committee strongly supports the proposed amendments to the zoning code. The village's multifamily office district encourages board trustees to pass them without delay. That's from the housing committee. It wasn't as long as I thought. It just looked longer, but I skipped some. I think that's it for correspondence. I think everyone else that sent the letter has spoken. Now it's up to the board. Do we think we need more input on this issue, or do we think we have enough input?
Brian,
Yes, Mary Ann.
Right, just one other thing that I think you should, before you vote on it, I just to report on the petition, remember the petition was submitted at the last meeting, a Village 7708 petition?
Yes.
And that, to be considered, to be valid, it has to have, 20% of all the neighboring property owners, and it looks like they did. I mean, I didn't go check whether the people on there actually own the property, but the number was so over, so in my read of it, it was a valid petition. So what that means is that the vote tonight has to be a supermajority, so it has to be, a vote of 4 out of 5 rather than 3 out of 5.
Okay, before we get to any votes, do people think they have enough information at this time, or do you think you need more time to get it back?
What do we do in regards to the environmental impact?
We can go over that now if we want.
Do we do that before or after this? I mean, I'm trying to figure out, isn't that an initial vote?
I think it is, yeah. So Mary Ann, so for the EAF, do you want to quickly go over that with us now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because you've got to do that before you vote on the law. So the part that you've got to answer is part 2 and part 3. So I'll just read the questions. And what I think are the answers. If you disagree, tell me. Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? And that answer is no, because it complies with the zoning regulations. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? And again, it's no, but because that's the site capacity is the way the building department would do it. But in any event, even if it weren't, and if it were a change, the difference might be, might be 5-6 units, and that would be a small impact. The difference between 50 and 55, or 48 and 55 would be small. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? I think the board has indicated it would be no. Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? And that's no. The only one in Hastings, in Irvington, is the Hudson River, and this doesn't affect that. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? Now, remember here, the action is not the building of the project. The action is this change in height and the change in site capacity. That wouldn't, whether there's going to be an impact on traffic will be reviewed in the environmental review of the entire project, which will be when it comes to the planning board. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation? Well, an amendment does not do that. Will the proposed action impact existing water supplies or treatment utilities? Again, no. Will the proposed action impair the quality or character of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources? No. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for flooding? No. And will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? I think the board, do you agree that all those answers should either be no or small?
These amendments would no.
Again, the amendments, not the project. So then, on the determination of significance, the amendments clarifying how site capacity is determined for this multifamily district will not result in a change in how site capacity is calculated. It reflects the current interpretation of the site capacity regulations. The amendment modifying how height is measured on steep slopes in the MFO district will not result in more residential units being created. Rather, it will permit more aesthetically sensitive layouts. If you agree with that, then you can, that'll be part of the resolution.
And there's one other piece with Strawberry Lane, right? Isn't there 3 parts to the amendment, or am I forgetting?
No, that's really, this is part of the site capacity, Mark.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that'll be read the EAF part two anyway. Yeah, it's kind of like a quick. If you think you have enough information to vote tonight, or do you want to keep the public hearing open? That's the question.
I'm prepared to vote.
Okay, well then I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. If I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor? So I assume that everyone, well, I'll read the, if I can find it. Being enacted by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Irvington as follows. Section 224-85-1, determination of site capacity in multifamily office district is hereby amended to read as follows, new language in italics. For 3 or more family uses, the site capacity in multifamily office district MFO shall be the net buildable site area divided by the density factor of 3,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet for senior citizen housing, rounded down to the next lower whole number, and calculating the base site area in the MFO district, the land on which any driveway is to be built that leads directly to a 3 or 4 more family dwelling or parking area servicing the dwelling shall not be deducted from gross site area. Additionally, the lot area required for any necessary improvements of Strawberry Lane shall not be subtracted from gross site area. Section 2, section 224-47.9E, height of the buildings in the multifamily office district is hereby amended as follows, new language in italics. No buildings or structures greater than 2 stories or 25 feet shall be permitted within 200 to 300 feet of Broadway. The maximum height of any building or structure greater than 300 feet in the Broadway right-of-way shall be 3 stories or 35 feet. Underground parking shall not be included in the number of stories. At-grade driveways for assessing underground parking shall not be included in measuring building height, providing the driveway is 30 feet or less in width or the minimum width needed for access, whichever is less. A straight line shall be drawn from the 2 points at grade adjacent to the driveway to form an imaginary line of grade in which the building shall be measured. The height 5, the height shall be measured at the periphery of the building where the building meets grade. At any given point where building meets grade, the height shall be measured from the lowest elevation of either the finished grade or the grade prior to construction, building or grading measuring point, the highest point of the building. The height shall be measured vertically from the measuring point to an imaginary point located at the allowed number of feet, 25 or 35, above the measuring point. See diagram. Then there's a diagram. Section 3, all ordinances, local laws, and parts thereof being consistent with this local law are hereby appealed. Section 4, this local law shall take effect upon filing with the Secretary of State. I will make a motion.
Brian, hold on, before you do that. There's a 4-paragraph resolution that accompanies that law. So I think that'll be the resolution that you're going to make a motion on.
Okay, let me.
It also, was it fixed? It has to be,
Yes,
you fixed it,
but
okay.
I'm happy to put it up on the screen, or I can read it.
Yeah, if you want to put it up on the screen, that's fine. Right?
Okay.
So, and I don't know how I don't have the 1 page.
1 page you want?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I'm glad I got to read the entire law.
Yeah, so there is a correction to what's actually up here, but I'll read it as we go. Whereas adoption of said local law, the one you just read, is an unlisted action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And whereas the Board of Trustees has reviewed the environmental assessment form related to said local law and has determined that such adoption will have no negative environmental impacts. Now therefore be it resolved, which is the part that had to be changed, that a negative declaration under seeker be issued, and further resolved to adopt a local law amending the zoning code with respect to development of the multifamily office district.
Okay, and we'll update the version that goes into the record, correct?
Yes, correct.
I'll make a motion if I got a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that's done. So now we are on to, I'll make a motion to open a public hearing to consider a local law amending chapter 55 of the village code regarding residency requirements for certain officers and employees. Have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Larry, did you want to give us a little background on this one?
Yeah, it's fairly straightforward. The current law that we have on our books allows for a residency of both in the village and in the county. So in our search for a replacement of clerk treasurer, it was noticed that rather than limiting our pool, we felt it important to extend it beyond the limits of just the county. The reality is it'll probably be an adjacent county, but if it's anything, but I think the way the law was drafted, it's New York State.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I think this is, I mean, it's consistent with our neighbors as well, so.
Yes.
It just makes sense to, you know, we have to find qualified people to do important jobs like be treasurer, so, you know, it's, or, you know, as an example.
They have big shoes to fill.
Yeah, exactly right.
I remember asking at the beginning of this process, what was the public policy behind limiting it to the county, and nobody was able to really tell me any really good reason why that was not, so.
We couldn't really, yeah, we couldn't even get like a, you know, I remember when we had no overnight parking, we had like a big theory from the 1950s that you knew that a car shouldn't be there. We don't really even have one other than, you know, it was parochial. I don't know, like it was just.
So, I mean, obviously, if there's no public policy to support it, we would want the biggest pool possible to get the best candidate we can get, right? So it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And Marianne, I believe you had said that there's a precedent ruling in favor of this change in the requirements?
Yes, there is. It's really, it's so esoteric, but it is ordinarily a local board can't enact a law that's inconsistent with a general state law. And the general state law is the residency has to be the village. But there were a lot of, the legislature enacted lots of exceptions to that. So they'd say, you know, in the town of Port Washington, the treasurer can be from anywhere in the state, in the county of Sullivan, anyway. So there's all these exceptions. So a third department appellate division last year ruled that because of all those exceptions, it's a special law, not a general law. And so the locality can pass its own law about it.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions, comments? Those we can open it up to public comment. Anyone at home there?
No.
Okay, then I will make a motion to close the public hearing if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved to adopt the local law amending chapter 55 of the village code regarding residency requirements for certain officers and employees. I'll make a motion if I can have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
10, award of contract 2022-14 part 1 for cleaning services in Village Hall and Irvington Public Library. You have a little story here, Larry?
Yeah, there always is. So this is a fairly straightforward. So the low bidder and the second low bidder, which you had awarded the contract to for the cleaning of Village Hall and the library, I believe. The low bidder backed out. They claimed that they misunderstood the price that they put down. And when the second low bidder was contacted, they backed out also, claiming the same thing. So we're recommending the third low bidder, which actually had been cleaning Village Hall all along. So, but it's a procedural thing at this point. And there's no misunderstanding about the price they put down.
Whereas the Board of Trustees previously awarded the bid to Absolutely Clean Maintenance and Detailing Services, which we did appreciate their name, in Resolution 22-110, whereas Absolutely Clean Maintenance and Detailing Services has withdrawn their bid, as well as the next lowest bidder, LN Pro Services LLC. Now therefore be it resolved to award a contract 2022-14 Part 1 to the lowest bidder, Fullerton Service Industries, for an annual contract of $32,976, and to authorize the village administrator to execute said contract. I'll make a motion if I can get a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
They don't come back.
Too many pieces of paper in there. Next up is reports of board standing committees and officers. Start with you, Mark.
Yeah, so I have unfortunate bad news that Alan Richardson, who's the chair of the tree commission, has stated his desire to step down from chairmanship by the end of the year. He wants to maintain a role in the tree commission as a regular member. And so we are in a mode of trying to figure out how to get a new chair. The existing regular members are not, one of them has been chair previously, the other one is not interested. So we have to strategize, and Larry, I'm sure you've begun to talk to Alan, or maybe you will talk to him about strategizing for how to find someone.
Yeah, I'll certainly be in touch with him.
Yep. So I had one other question for you, which is just about the sustainability coordinator. Did we get applications in for that?
Yes, we did. We have, I believe we have 4, and I'm going to be starting a review and interview process and being inclusive of others, not just me, obviously.
Right, that's what I was going to ask you. Is like, have you had developed a list in your mind yet of who might review the contracts?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'll propose that to you and the rest of the board, and we'll see where you want to go with it, how deep you want to go into it.
Yep. Good. Okay. Thank you. That's it for me.
Yeah.
Really just one thing, I want to remind the board that we have moved our work session that was originally scheduled for next Wednesday to Tuesday, the 11th. And at that work session, the Woods Committee is going to give a presentation about their proposals and recommendations as far as maintaining the Irvington Woods in a number of ways.
Just a reminder, I'll be late to that meeting.
It's also a good reminder because I was changing it in my calendar.
Yeah. Larry, I think it'd be most efficient if I zoom in for that one, because that way when my Zoom meeting ends, I don't have to physically get here. I can just switch over to this Zoom meeting and jump on. So I'm going to join that work session by Zoom.
The 11th?
The 11th instead of the 12th.
Thank you very much.
That was a great
Okay, so the 11th, Mitchell will be remote.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And I'll be a little bit late. There's a meeting. When they asked us for today, I wasn't available, but out of deference to Larry's role. Committee, I said it's more important. I missed the beginning. So we're switching.
Appreciate it.
Not no problem. I didn't want people to think I'm a slacker, and I scheduled something against a meeting that was scheduled a year ago, and I did not do that.
Is that it?
That's it.
All right.
Reports?
Yeah.
I think on the record, I have no reports.
All right. Arlene? All right. Village administrator.
Results.
Apologize, hold on. Okay, sorry, I have nothing tonight.
Well, the anticipation.
No, I know. Sorry, just juggling 10 different things here. I actually was checking, I'm sorry, what's distracting me is that I was checking on who actually voted on the resolution for the local law. So if Brenda jotted down who made the motion and who made the second, that would be helpful. I just didn't
I
write
made
it
the
down.
motion, and actually we had 2 people second it, so.
All right. So we'll go back.
Yeah.
I did for the, you talking about for the expanding the area?
Oh, sorry, let's go. I have, okay,
For the,
closed was
For the zoning.
Larry Lunkey. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So we're talking about the first public hearing.
Right, the first one.
But I seconded the zoning code amendment.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
And you got all the votes, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Village attorney's report,
I don't have one.
public comment. Anybody, Larry? Felix want
Did
anything?
Felix have a comment?
He has an issue that he's going to email me separately. So yeah, and if he didn't make it on till the end, which it looks like he did, but he'll email me separately. All right.
Hi, Chris Lando, 3 Ardsley Avenue East. Appreciate everyone's time. Another long night. I know I came right from the office. I'm really hungry. But I'm just a little disappointed that in light of all of the discussion on the zoning amendment, whereas the capacity change had no effect on anything currently being contemplated and was the largest complaint factor of everyone who presented, among a lot of other things and a lot of other issues, that it wasn't reconsidered and we've just passed it along. And I feel very badly for the gentleman who went through this whole appeal process, whether or not he can or he can't. He spent a lot of his time trying to figure out and do it the right way. And it's really disappointing that when individuals spend a lot of their time, they feel like they're not heard. So that's it.
Appreciate your comments. Action items, Larry? Didn't really have anything.
Other than reaching out to Alan and dealing with all that, that's it. And the sustainability there, of course.
Get better, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, feel better, Larry.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to bed.
So I will make a motion to adjourn if I can have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, yeah.
You want to get every last minute meetings?